Hi, I'm Dominique and I run the business Radiant Leader. I empower female leaders to step bravely into more of their power, their potential, their influence, and craft a deeply soul-fulfilled life. Today, I want to talk about the heroine's journey because my core long program is called Radiant Leader Heroine's Journey, and it uses the structure of this grand mega myth to help guide women on their transformational growth journey from point A to point B. So why do I want to talk about the heroine's journey? Well, if you're a female leader, either in a career or founding a business yourself, and you are stuck at the moment, you're in confusion, lack of clarity, you're going through a change process, you're in the middle of a rupture, you're in the middle of a transition, then you're going to want to listen to this. Sometimes that transition, that rupture process might look like something happening in your personal life, like a divorce, like a bereavement. Sometimes the way that rupture and cataclysm happens in our lives is in the form of redundancy, being fired, being an untenable working situation in a toxic work environment. Whatever it is, maybe you're in this place where what you used to do is no longer working. The coping mechanisms that got you here are no longer going to get you where you need to go. And maybe it's tough right now as well, because the heroine's journey starts with leaving the comfort and the familiarity of home and stepping into the darkness, stepping into the woods, if you want to use that metaphor, the magical mystery woods of the fairy tales, stepping into the unknown. So the heroine's journey has taken the more well-known mythological structure of the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, and the brilliant psychologist Maureen Murdoch adapted it to make it more relevant for women. Thank goodness she did, because her version, if only I'd found it 7 years before I entered onto my path, would have been like a map and a compass to help me navigate that unknown terrain. But I didn't find her then, which is why I'm so passionate about this now and why I talk about it. The hero's journey, again, Joseph Campbell, it's the narrative arc of so many of our biggest films and movies. George Lucas famously referenced it as the structure that he used for Star Wars, but pretty much every author, movie maker uses the arc of the hero's journey. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, they're really clearly symbolized in those films. You've got the hero, the protagonist, who steps out or is booted out of the comfortable familiarity of home. So think of Luke Skywalker suddenly discovering his aunt and uncle have been killed, having no choice but to go on his journey. Think about Harry Potter being able to escape the clutches of his aunt and uncle, funnily enough, also to go to Hogwarts. That's the beginning of the journey. They are taken out of their familiar surroundings and into the unknown. Then on this journey, they meet monsters. They have trials and tribulations. They're tested to their limits. And also they meet mentors. So for Luke Skywalker, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi. And for Harry Potter, it was Dumbledore and his friends as well. So you have good guys and bad guys, mentors and fairy godmothers and demons and witches and so on, testing and trialing you. You go into this kind of subliminal underworld, murky realm of the unknown. You learn more about yourself, you peel away the old you, and then you come back and you return to home, a new, different, improved version of you, wise with everything that you've learned, but still essentially the same person that you already were, able to give your gifts back to the community. Well, Maureen Murdoch brilliantly challenged Joseph Campbell on this and said this is great for men, but it doesn't speak so well to women. And she was particularly thinking of women in the West who have reached a certain level of success and comfort in their lives through shoehorning themselves into the shape of success outlined in the corporate world as well. She decided to adapt this structure for women, and I want to share a little bit about that now. So the structure of the heroine's journey is first this disidentification that a woman might have with her own feminine. And in Western culture, even today, unfortunately, I think it's pretty easy to see where that comes from. Still, the toxic patriarchy, the misogyny, the level of sexualization and objectification of women, and our relationship with our own biological mothers and how they have experienced stress and objectification and repression under a patriarchal world has impacted on their daughters. With all of that as the background, a woman might deny the feminine, deny her softer parts, her compassion. And this is, again, we can talk a lot about feminine and masculine. This isn't about sex or gender, actually. We all have these energies within ourselves, but I speak specifically for women. And when I'm talking about feminine energy, you could also think of it in the Taoist terms of yin energy, the soft, receptive, intuitive parts of yourself, versus yang energy, the masculine energy, the solar, fiery, action-oriented, linear aspects of yourself. Women have very often denied or devalued those qualities in themselves because that's what's been mirrored by society. And they go on a journey to prove themselves at first by fitting into this very rigid masculine structure. Well, that was certainly my journey. I wanted and was for a brief amount of time in my 20s to be an actress and to be a writer. And then I kind of let that go. And I found a new career in marketing, but that career in marketing was in some of the most aggressive and masculine, male-dominated industries there are: property, railways, and finally, football. So it didn't get much more aggressive, competitive, and masculine than that. I thought I was going into a creative career, but interestingly, what I was doing was very unconsciously following in the footsteps of my father, who's an architect, and my grandfather, who's a property developer. So even though I didn't plan it, I unconsciously stepped into an industry, the property development world, uh, that would maybe subconsciously get me approval from the family as well. I struggled in those environments because I became successful very, very quickly through over-functioning, through a lot of hard work, through a lot of resilience, through a lot of perfectionism and excellence and commitment to excellence, and a lot of, strengths and creativity and good traits as well, but also some coping mechanisms that became untenable. People pleasing, the need for approval, perfectionism, and lack of confidence and self-doubt, imposter syndrome, but we can unpack imposter syndrome and how helpful it is as a term, another stage, all impacted me. And the environments that I worked in were not just tough, they varied in degree. Some of them were more supportive than others, but in most of the institutions that I worked in, from really being a schoolgirl upwards, I experienced bullying and I experienced sexual harassment from the men around me. Now, there are some reasons why those patterns were repeating in my life based on my home life. But of course, there are also these industries that turned a blind eye to those behaviors for a very long time, and nothing condones them, obviously. So it was very challenging environments. In the end, I knew that I couldn't be all of me in those environments, and I couldn't be some of the softer, more feminine aspects of me didn't get a chance to see the light of day or to breathe because I had pushed them so far down. I'd become disconnected to that aspect of myself. I even remember thinking consciously when I was a young 29, 30-year-old, just starting in the property industry and having to go around on site visits with a hard hat and hard nailed boots, that I made a decision consciously not to smile ever at anyone because then people wouldn't take me seriously. So I also noticed the men and women in those environments that I worked weren't really the kind of people that I wanted to grow into as well. So I took a side tangent. I quit my entire career at the age of 37, and I went on what I didn't realize at the time would be what I now call my 7 years in Tibet moment. I traveled around the world. I retrained as a yoga and meditation teacher. I learned the mystical temple arts. I became a belly dancer. I learned about goddess mythology, feminine mythology. And then when that hadn't quite hit the spot in terms of me being able to do all that I wanted to do, I got very interested in mindset, and I retrained as a rapid transformational therapist under Marissa Peer, very famous world-leading celebrity hypnotherapist. And I trained in heart healing, another power combo form of hypnotherapy, and also as a transformational coach from the Institute of Women-Centered Coaching. That's when transformation really started to happen for me. So it was a real journey of exploration, and a lot of that journey around the outer world became a journey of the inner world. And it became a connection back to the sacred feminine, back to being connected to the beautiful feminine energy of incredible sacred centers around the world. I returned briefly to the UK after the first year and a half of travel, and I became very depressed. So that's then when my heroine's journey started in full. I had what is, I suppose, commonly known as a dark night of the soul. And my way of finding my way out of it was to buy a one-way ticket for Peru. I was drawn to the feminine energy of the Andes, of Hawaii, of Argentina, and of all of the Pacific Northwest. And that's when I carried on my journey, both connecting to the energy of the land, connecting to myself, connecting to these beautiful sacred arts like meditation. Spent a lot of time facilitating silent retreats on the beaches of Mexico, overlooking the beaches of Mexico, and also running dance workshops for women and holding Women's Circle. When I came back, I realized, and I needed to come back firstly, back to the UK to integrate everything that I've learned and create a business. So this is the final stage of the heroine's journey. So we had this bit at the beginning where women that Maureen Murdoch identified of shoehorning yourself into a corporate patriarchal world, and that definition of what success means, then realizing that that isn't what success is, and going on this kind of descent into darkness, this descent into the unknown, which varying degrees of pain depending on who you are. I've had both of those moments. You know, when I stepped out the first time from my corporate life and traveled, I was in a fairly positive place. The second time, these cycles that repeat through your life, I was having a dark night of the soul. I experienced depression. I hadn't had that since my 20s. So we have the descent into the unknown, when everything you've done that used to work before, your over-functioning, your lack of boundaries, people pleasing, approval seeking, all of those things that actually led to quite good success, no longer work for you. And then that moment when I traveled around the land and around the world and connected to this beautiful feminine practices was the reconnection of the sacred feminine. So the next stage Maureen Murdoch talks about is the connection to the sacred feminine. It's also a healing of the mother wound, a healing of our relationship with our biological mother, which holds us back consciously or unconsciously a lot more than we think, and replacing it with a connection to a sense of sacredness and the divine with a feminine face that is so much more of a more powerful grandmother archetype to connect to. And then the final stage is the return, as it was with the hero's journey. But it is a return. And as you return, you reintegrate all of the masculine qualities that you may have thrown out with the bathwater on the rest of your journey. So for me, that was very much coming back to my homeland again, but creating a business, creating a structure, and finding a way of sharing those gifts with the world in a new and different way, for as someone who was a completely different person to who I was 10 years ago. So many different qualities, although of course my essence is the same. And who's someone who is also dialed up on those more repressed feminine qualities, the compassion, the empathy, my creativity have all been pulled into play to support other people now. And now that work that I do is for the greater good, it's for the good of the whole. I help people heal from depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, to get out of toxic work environments and to renegotiate for what they were truly worth. And I'm able to share and impact people's lives in so much more of a meaningful way. And that is the gift of the heroine's journey. If we allow ourselves to go on this journey, we become someone who contributes more of a legacy at the end of it that is of service to humankind. Because none of the women I work with are interested in just the paycheck at the end of the day. It's never just the money that's motivating them. They're here to make an impact. They're here to use all of their skills, all of their unique set of gifts and strengths and what makes them uniquely them, inhabit that potential in creating something, in pioneering something maybe completely new that they can then impact the world with. The journey can feel lonely and it can feel highly disorienting when we're stuck in that place of sadness, darkness, stuckness, confusion, lack of clarity. When we're anxious, burning out, highly strung, it can be really hard to see that there is a path, to know where we're going. I call it being spun round in your divine fog. It's a bit like that. But I want you to know, and this is why I created the program, and this is why I work with women, I want you to know that although everyone's journey is individual to them and different, there are milestones along the way that are the same. And I wish I had known this. I wish someone had told me this when I started out. I probably wouldn't have taken 7 years. It was very long-winded. I went up the mountain the slowest route possible. I was the one, I think it's in Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, where she says, you know, you could go the direct path, or you can be the one with the rucksack on your back, 2 suitcases and a watermelon under each arm. That was me, okay? And I don't think you have to do that. You don't have to burn your bridges to the ground. You don't even have to leave the company that you're working with. That's not always the outcome of the women that work with me. Some women renegotiate better salaries because they've got back in touch with their clarity and their confidence. Some women negotiate exit strategies where they're financially rewarded, but they are moving on to a path that's much more in alignment with who they are. Some women set up businesses. Some women write novels, launch podcasts, launch women's groups, because they have a creative project that they want to birth with the world. Some women double their salary or get new job offers and jump to new places. There's always an empowered ending, but it's different for everyone, depending on you, uniquely you, and what you want. And we really tune into all of our strength as a woman to work out what that is, not just figuring it out from the mind, but figuring it out from the heart, from our energy, from our soul, and from our curiosity. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'm running a free 3-part healing retreat day on Sunday, the 15th of September. And I'd love it if you could join me. You can join from the comfort of your own home via Zoom. And you don't need to do anything except show up and switch your camera on, have a blanket with you and a cup of tea. And there's going to be 3 different healing sessions. So you get a really good idea of how I work and also receive a very valuable, powerful healing session on the day. The first day would be talking about the mythology of the heroine's journey and the descent part of it. I'll be talking about goddess and feminine archetypes, feminine mythology. You know, we can do this the boring, dry way by sitting in a therapist's office for 10 years. But why? When we're women, when there's creativity, dance, poetry, symbolism, mythology, an archetype that we can weave into our journey to make it magical. It might sometimes be painful, but it can always be exquisite and enchanting. The second one is going to be a hypnotherapy session that you can lie down and receive to heal the wound of feeling not good enough. I'll explain what heart healing hypnotherapy is, why it's so effective, how it gets the amazing rapid results it does, and then you'll experience a session. And the final session of the day, you'll get a taste of what the Institute of Women-Centered Coaching, how that framework works with women, and also how you can approach this quite common fear that a lot of women that work with me have around being seen. So visibility is one of the first aspects of the heroine's journey that I work on with women, because if you think about it, you're doing this descent into the darkness where everything that you were before is no longer working. And that's normally because we've created a false self and we've shown the world this false acceptable self in order to get what we think of as success. And that starts to crumble because that's not our authentic self. And that's not what our authentic self wants. So powerful women don't have a problem giving presentations or speaking up in board meetings, in that they have a competence level in which, and a seniority level where they're required to do it. But still, so many women, even women at that level, struggle with feeling confident on the inside about being visible and being seen. We're going to go into the reasons behind that, the psychological reasons. I see visibility as a psycho-spiritual journey, and then how we can heal it. I hope you join me. If you're interested, I'll put the link in the comments. All you need to do is sign up. You don't have to attend all of the sessions live because there'll be a recording, but I do encourage you to ride the energy of the group. Sending lots of love, and let me know in the comments if you found this helpful.